So it has been 2 months since the Switch has come out and since I've had it. For context, I bought the Switch at launch. Honestly, it was a super fun experience. I was standing in line at Best Buy, and because of that, I've had it through its early days and watched and listened to the discourse online and was really following it because I thought it was really interesting, all of the experiences and thoughts that people had surrounding the Switch 2. And I was like, I don't know, some of these things I agree with, some of these I don't, and I just wanted to make videos so that I can actually talk about some of my thoughts and what I think of the Switch 2, because as someone who's had it from the beginning and who had a Switch and a Switch OLED beforehand, I think I have some insight on how the Switch 2 is doing and what it is what it's like as a product, and also what Nintendo is doing outside of that, because there's a lot of things that Nintendo is doing that is shaking up the gaming industry in good ways and some bad ways. So I want to get into all of that, and I want to talk about my experience in the last 2 months. So let's get into it. So my first impressions of the Switch 2 when I took it out of the box was honestly really exciting. As soon as you can see in the video that as soon as I opened it up, I was so just excited because we didn't know what it was going to be like. And so it's that newness and excitement of I'm one of the first people that are actually seeing it and using it. And I will say, as soon as I turned it on, the first thing I noticed wasn't actually the screen, it was the speakers. And the feeling that I had when listening to the speakers for the first time was quite interesting because it felt really surround sound for how small it was, and that impressed me. And I'm an audiophile. I have quite a few different audio devices that I use that I think create a good soundstage and experience when listening. And I think that Nintendo did a really good job here with the Switch 2, and I'll get a little bit more into that, but my first impression of it was just like, oh wow, like it kind of wowed me because I wasn't expecting the speakers to sound good. And the next thing I noticed about the Switch 2 was the size, and also the size of the screen. Wow, it's so big.
That's what she said.
It is much larger than the Switch and the Switch OLED, and I think that is a good thing. But for me, I have smaller hands, so there are some downsides for me personally, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But the next thing I noticed as soon as it turned on was the screen, and that, I clocked it as an LCD like pretty quickly. I already knew that it was an LCD screen, but I wanted to see if it would be something that I would notice right away, and it was. I was like, yep, this is an LCD screen. I thought it was going to be more of a problem than it is, and I'm going to get more into that in a second. Let's talk about what's impressive about the Switch 2. Over the course of 2 months, I have got to experience raw power and performance that feels sort of out of this world for a handheld of its size. If you are not up to speed with all of the handhelds that are out there right now, there's a lot to choose from, and they all vary in performance. And a lot of the ones that give you the same kind of performance as the Switch 2, they're beefy things, or they got Windows on them, or it's got SteamOS and it's still just not as flawless of an experience. And I'm going to get into why it's not as flawless of an experience. But because it is a console made by Nintendo, it is smooth and it works really well because it's well optimized. And in my experience, that's what it's been like so far. It has been kind of unreal to go from a Switch OLED to a Steam Deck OLED. I have a Steam Deck OLED. I love that thing. Don't get me wrong, it's incredible. And the Switch 2 has better performance just overall because it's optimized better. And so that's been really impressive to see and to experience, because it feels like the next step in gaming, and it feels like we're in the future of handheld gaming, and it's only going to get better from here. And because of its performance, it makes Switch 1 games that used to be unplayable actually playable and enjoyable. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. And I actually finished the game because I hadn't finished it before because it was just, God, it was god awful. It put such a bad taste in my mouth. And so now I can actually play that game and enjoy it. I know that a new generation console shouldn't have to make a game playable. Game Freak, did you hear that? But because it is, that's exciting and still fun. It's a game that I get to experience now better than before. So I think people are sort of forgetting about the raw performance that it actually has and how great it is. It runs 1080p at 30 or 60 FPS handheld on most Nintendo games and most games that can support that. And even if it's not supporting that in particular, it runs what it runs very well. And it outputs 4K or 2.5K or 1080p docked at 60 FPS for supported games. And the games that I have played on it so far that can do 4K, I mean, I was playing Cyberpunk, I played Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bonanza, and those games look exquisite. They look so good. I know that a lot of other games and consoles look really good, but I think people are sort of forgetting the context in which those games are played. If you have a PC handheld, it will run great handheld and as a separate computer, but its battery life is shit playing handheld. And you have Windows on it, which creates a lot of barriers before starting a game because there's a lot you have to do to adjust to get the handheld to work properly. If you have a Steam Deck, you are most likely playing that handheld, and its native resolution is 1280 by 800. If you're playing an indie title, it will run flawlessly, and with great frame rates between like 45 and 90, it will also play that title with good frame rates docked to a TV at either 1080p and 4K. It just depends on the game. However, things change when you want to play a more demanding title. I've personally struggled to get more demanding games to play well and look good docked, like Horizon Zero Dawn, Spider-Man Remastered, Kena Bridge of Spirits, just to name a few. So I usually end up playing those games on my PC, which sort of defeats the purpose of the Steam Deck in the first place because I want to play comfortably. And sometimes I don't want to play at my desk. I want to play on the couch with my TV. And I know there are workarounds for this, like Steam Link, where you can stream to your TV, and other streaming workarounds, but that means it's not as seamless of a process. With the Switch 2, you just put it in the dock. Done. No fuss, just seamlessly gaming in an instant. And that's what I think people are forgetting. And the Switch 2 is doing it in a small package. The Switch 2 is super thin. And all of these other kind of chonker devices are not outputting that kind of performance. And I think that's impressive. And I think people are forgetting that. And they're also forgetting the fact that the Switch 2 is a fun and playable experience, both docked and handheld. The Steam Deck OLED runs really well handheld, but it does not run very well docked for kind of more AAA titles or games that are maybe older AAA titles. They just don't run as well. But if you play an indie game, gorgeous, wonderful. But you don't get to play everything. And that's the problem. And so what the Switch 2 does really well is it does switching very well, right? It does docked really well, and it does handheld really well, which is the whole point of the console. The next thing that is impressive, honestly, is the screen. I think it's gorgeous. I know that it is not an OLED screen, but I'm going to tell you, as someone who was disappointed because I am an OLED screen junkie, I love screens, especially OLED screens. I thought I couldn't go back, but when you actually play the games, you do not notice that it's not an OLED screen because it's that good. Like, I think it gets plenty bright if you uncheck auto brightness. Make sure you do that. If you have a Switch 2, uncheck auto brightness because it will become brighter. The HDR just makes it look so good for games that support HDR. But the only thing that I think that's really holding it back is the fact that the screen's pretty reflective, which makes it hard to see the screen in kind of any kind of light, which is why I got a matte screen protector from JSOX. And that, once I put that on there, it was a game changer. And so, yes, there's some accessories and things you have to do to sort of make the screen kind of more optimal, which is not ideal. It's not the end of the world because, brief correction, I didn't like my original reason when I recorded this video, so even though it's not ideal having to buy an accessory to deal with the reflections of the screen, I don't think it's a huge deal because you're most likely going to buy a screen protector anyways, so might as well get a matte glass screen protector that helps resolve that. Especially because I do think the LCD screen looks better than the OLED display on the original Switch OLED, but a lot of people are coming from a Switch 1, most likely. Some people will have a Switch OLED, but even for me coming from the Switch OLED to the Switch 2's LCD screen, I still think it's better. The resolution's better, it's crisper. I didn't notice any ghosting. That's what people are talking about, that there's ghosting. I don't see it. That's just my experience, so maybe it's per console, per person. But the gameplay when you're actually gaming it works great. So I don't see it as an issue personally. And to my point, I think Nintendo's rationale for an LCD display makes sense. And what they did when they chose an LCD display is I think they thought about it just matters what gaming is like. If you're gaming on it and the experience does not feel like it is good enough or immersive enough or beautiful enough, that's a problem. But they chose an LCD screen that is beautiful. And when you're playing, you do not notice whether it's OLED or LCD, you're just immersed in the game. And I think Nintendo did a good job of finding a screen that does just that. Okay, so let's talk about the good things. These are just the good things, just good. 2 USB-C ports. Oh, thank God, I don't even use the bottom one anymore. I just use the top one. But obviously the bottom one is necessary to dock. So, but super thankful that we have 2. Thank you, Nintendo. The speakers are good. I like them. Some people are probably going to be like, it doesn't have enough bass, but I personally think the bass is good enough. Like, it's balanced. It doesn't get in the way, but it also could be a little bit more prominent. I would like to see that, but I think I prefer to have the other things feel and sound clear, which they do. And it does feel pretty kind of immersive. It doesn't really feel like it's coming from one particular place at you. It kind of feels like it's just in the air, which I think to me is what makes a good pair of speakers. Although it could be louder, but I don't know. For me, I don't really need it to be that loud, but it could be louder. I think for some people it could benefit from being louder. The other good thing, Switch 1 games that didn't play well, play great now. And so it's super awesome to finish your backlog on the Switch 2, and that's what I've been doing. Okay, I think the design of the Switch 2 is pretty great across the board. I don't have too much to complain about, although there are some things to complain about, and we'll get there. But the good things are, the magnetic Joy-Cons are super great. They're satisfying. It's the way that the Joy-Con should have been in the first place. I know there have been some issues with some accessories where the Joy-Cons pop off, like the dbrand kill switch case, but I think overall it is a great design. The Joy-Con button and joystick placement is pretty good. It's where they should be, but I still think that for me as someone with small hands, I think I did actually kind of prefer the smaller form factor of the Switch OLED and the Switch. So because my hands are small, I kind of have to grip the Switch from kind of more up here to reach the buttons. And because of that, when I use the camera, the joystick here, it's a really weird position to like move my thumb all the way up here. It's just not natural. It doesn't feel as natural. My thumb wants to rest more up here. And so because of that, when I go down to this joystick, I have to kind of press sort of the top up here instead of kind of more in this area, which is kind of annoying. I've gotten used to it now, but it's just, it's not ideal. And so what I've been doing is I bought a little grip for the top of the joysticks to make that process a little bit easier. So let's talk about the things that need some work, like the battery life. It's not ideal. You get about 2-ish hours if you're playing a more demanding game. If it's not as demanding, you're probably getting somewhere between 2.5 to 4 hours, depends. But I have noticed myself gravitating toward the charging cable a lot more than I'd like to be. But with that being said, it's not bad. Like, I think people are saying it's bad, and I'm like, I don't think it's bad. I just don't think it's good. It's sort of like, it's decent. It gets the job done. It's like kind of right in between. And to me, I think that's actually good because considering the performance that it's outputting, it's pretty damn impressive that it can hold on that long. So I think that in its context, the battery life is good, but I think if you're just looking at it pure hours wise, it's decent, like a solid, maybe C+, C+, B-. Like any Switch that is out on the market right now, Switch 1, Switch OLED, or Switch 2, ergonomics could be better. I wonder if Nintendo honestly does this on purpose, so that other companies have accessories to make it more ergonomic. I don't know, but I think they could have made the Joy-Cons more ergonomic. I think they could have added some sort of grip, some gripping on the back and it would still be playable, flipped this way. I don't see why they couldn't have done that. I think they chose not to for lots of different reasons. And I think the trade-off that they're making is make it look sleek and thin and nice and uniform and not have it be as ergonomic. But, To each their own, I guess. Although there is a caveat here. I think that tabletop mode is super underrated. Like when you're laying down in bed or you're sitting on the couch, propping up a pillow on your lap, and then putting that thing in tabletop on its kickstand, and then taking the Joy-Cons off and just leaving them on your side, and then playing like that, your arms are completely, straight and down. I think that's a very ergonomic position personally, and I don't think people talk about that enough, and I'm kind of annoyed that people don't talk about it enough. So you should just use tabletop more, honestly. If you're the kind of person who doesn't want to go out and buy accessories to make it more ergonomic, just use tabletop mode more. You'll thank me later. All right, it's time for my least favorite thing about the Switch 2, which is the joysticks. Honestly, this for me is probably the biggest thing. It's not even the fact that the joysticks are great. Don't get me wrong. They feel great. They're smooth. I haven't had any issues with them. But with that being said, the fact that they did not fix stick drift, or at least as far as we know, haven't fixed it. They haven't commented on that. But the fact that they're not Hall Effect joysticks is just, I don't understand why Nintendo didn't do that. That is just such an easy thing to do, and they didn't do it. I wonder if it was a cost-cutting thing. I don't know. But for me, it's not even the fact that, for me, it's more of a principle thing. This has been one of the things that everyone has been complaining about, stick drift, and you didn't fix it. That feels like a cash grab to me, so that people have to buy new Joy-Cons later. So I don't know. That puts a bad taste in my mouth. And I was just on Reddit, and I've already seen a video of someone who was showing stick drift on their Switch 2. So, like everyone is saying, it's not if, it's when. I hope that I haven't had stick drift on any of my old Switches. So thankfully for me, I'm chilling, but the fact that I may even have to worry about that is a problem for me. All right, so let's actually get into the Nintendo things and the discourse around it. I'm going to talk about some things I agree with, and then I'm going to talk about some things that I don't agree with. So let's go. First, the price of games and accessories are way too high.
The rent is too damn high.
$80 for Mario Kart World is ridiculous. Sorry, I played it. It's a great game. I think it's awesome, but $80. I got the bundle, so for me, it was it was only $50, which is great. Again, I think that's another cash grab thing. I think Nintendo was like, people are going to want this game. Let's get another $50 in at each Switch sale. I don't know. I don't like it. And I think it's valid that people are upset that Nintendo is being greedy. I don't want to defend Nintendo. Perhaps, there's a reason behind it. Maybe they needed to cut. Maybe there were some things that they needed to spend more money on. So they're trying to offset that cost in some way. But I don't know. I don't think so. I think they know how much they're going to sell, and I think they don't care, and they just want to get the money. That's what I think. Okay, game key cards, yeah, this is up there with the stick drift for me. There have been many times I've wanted to buy the actual game cards, and I like the cartridges. I think they're super great. I just like having them. They're cool. But then I'm like, ugh, is it a game key card though? Yes. Ugh. I don't want it because there's no point. And everyone's talking about this, and I'm only just adding to it because it's valid and true and stupid. Bring original game cartridges back, please, Nintendo. This is ridiculous. If you listen to anything, listen to that, please. Okay, I'm gonna stop talking about that before I get more heated. So people have been talking about the OLED screen. I touched on this. I know it's not ideal. I would have preferred an OLED screen, but I'm telling you, it is not necessary because playing on it, in my experience, it's great. You're not going to notice it, I promise you. For some people, maybe it will bug them. Maybe they have a sharper eye than me, but I have a pretty sharp eye, and I'm really, really sensitive to screens and how they look, but this one is good, I promise you. People were harping on the price of the console for being $450. I think that's fairly priced, personally. I think for what it does, I think it's worth that money, and I'll tell you why. You get a lot in the box. A lot of these other kind of gaming handheld consoles, you have to buy a controller separately, and buy some sort of dock separately. Let's compare it to the Steam Deck. You have to get a dock, which is $80. You have to get a controller, which is somewhere between $30 to $80, depending on what controller you get. So by the end of, you buying the Steam Deck, you're looking at around the same cost for the Switch 2 or more if you get the OLED. The Switch 2 comes with a dock, and it comes with the Joy-Cons with the little with the adapter thing. What is that thing called? I don't know. The little adapter where you put the little Switch 2 Joy-Cons in there, which becomes a controller. So you get a free controller technically, and 2 more if you think about it. The Joy-Cons pop off and now you have 2, and you get a dock, all for $450. I think it's a pretty good deal, personally. Do I think the Nintendo Switch 2 is worth it? I'm gonna tell you who I think it's worth it for. I think it's worth it for the people who are Nintendo fans, obviously. I think if you're the kind of Nintendo fan, though, that has a backlog of Switch games that you haven't finished yet, particularly if they are Nintendo titles, it's worth it for you, because then you get to play those titles on the Switch 2, and a lot of them have upgrades, which is great. I also think if you are really excited about Donkey Kong Bonanza, or you're intrigued by it, you should get it. It's an amazing game. Honestly, I gave it a 9.5 out of 10. You should take a look at my review. I also think it's worth it if you're the kind of person who just has the money for it, honestly. If you got the money for it and you're thinking about it, I'd say just get it, because you're not gonna be disappointed. It's a great console. If you just look at it kind of on its own, you don't really look at all the other things, it's a great device. But if you're someone who's on the fence, not sure, maybe you like some games, maybe you aren't like super into some Nintendo titles, but you do like some, I think it's worth just waiting, honestly. If that's the kind of person you are, I think you should just wait till there's more titles that you can play, and until more third-party games come out that are optimized for it, then I think it's gonna be a really worth it console, and I think people are really gonna be buying it even more like hotcakes. And it may even go on sale. Probably not, but it could. And then finally, I just want to preface by saying that this console isn't for everyone. And I also want to say that who this console is for, it's for playing Nintendo games. That's why you're getting this. Nintendo is not really selling you a console. They're selling you their games. They're just giving you a console for you to play those games. And the console, all it has to do is play those games well. And it does. And I think that Nintendo games are, a lot of the times for me, worth playing and worth some of this hassle. I don't like the hassle. I think that Nintendo should work on this, because it's not good. It's not a good look. And their games are just freaking fun. If you're a Nintendo fan, you know what I mean. You know the feeling of starting a new Nintendo game. There's just a magic about it. It hooks you kind of right away, and it just switches a light on inside of me that activates all sorts of feelings that, you know, are wrapped up in nostalgia, but also wrapped up in my inner child, like parts of me that just want to sit back, relax, and enjoy a game. Because Nintendo games aren't like the most difficult games. What they are is just fun. So all Nintendo has to do is make the experience better on a newer console, right? Adding things like better screen, better speakers, bigger overall form factor, better performance, all of those things are contributing to a really good gaming experience for Nintendo games. With all of that being said, I think the Switch 2 has a bright future ahead of it. It's only been 2 months, so I don't know if I can't say that it's definitively worth it for everyone, but I will say I do think it is a console that is going to be extremely successful, and it's going to be something that everyone wants to get. As soon as there are more titles that you can play on it, of course. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. Like and subscribe if that's something that you like to do. My name is Kai. I like to just make videos about anything that I want to talk about any given moment of my life. So I really appreciate you tuning in, and I'll see you next time.